I wanted to do a video talking a little bit about the mysterious megaliths of Japan, specifically around Nara, and if you look to the left, between the shoots of bamboo, you can see a fully grown adult woman, dwarfed by Masuda Iwafune of Asuka in Nara Prefecture. This is an 800-ton granite boulder that's been heavily worked into a trapezoid which looks roughly similar to a turtle, and a lot of historians and archaeologists think it ties into other similar rocks in the area that are carved into very intentional turtle designs. This is an old sort of survey material, and you can see two holes in the top. One on the left has a crack in it, and especially here and on the opposite side, you've got interesting scales that are carved into the side of the rock. Pretty soon I'll show you with my hand for reference how deep these scales are carved in, but they're very intentional, leading me to question why some sides of this are basically polished and why some sides have these very deep scales. The dimensions of this, it's 5 meters tall and 11 meters long, 8 meters wide. It is a tomb that most believe originates from the 7th century, and from what I have seen, I would say there are two holes carved in the top. One has a crack so it can no longer hold water, so when it was built as a royal tomb, it was probably abandoned and left as basically a folkloric symbol carved into the shape of a turtle. And what I would also say is, I've noticed in a couple of writings, it says that this looks much like the stone chambers found within Kofun tombs, but the scales are closely related to an art practiced in Goryeo, which was a very early form of a modern Korean state. It's where they get the name Korea from, but it was spelled Goryeo, and they actually had a very large cultural exchange with early modern Japan. But what I think is so fascinating about this rock is that, especially when you get into the ancient mysteries, a lot of people will say things like, oh, this rock was incredibly tough, but they'll be talking about something like tufa from volcanic eruptions, something that's actually like pumice, that's very easily worked. This is solid granite. You get up to it, you touch it, it's incredibly hard, and it weighs nearly 1,000 tons. Obviously, I don't believe this was moved from anywhere else. This was on top of the mountains, but simply working this would have been an incredible undertaking for the ancient Japanese people. And this is an ancient woodcut of it as well, or a very old woodcut of it as well. You can see it's here in sort of a grove or a forest on a hill overlooking the nearby train station, and I've seen a lot of photos of people climbing on top of it, but the reason I didn't is because plenty of signs say they don't want you really doing that because it could damage it over time. So please try to refrain from that if you come and visit this spot yourself, and it's a very beautiful spot to visit. Some of the things I noticed on the way up, you've got this sort of dugout area, which may have been an ancient quarry, and the traffic through here, through the soil, is so common that you can actually see scoop marks in here. You can see literal hand marks. They're scooping the soil out, but it's so commonly moved through, it looks like a trench. And the bamboo in this forest is so beautiful. It's a gorgeous pale green shade, as opposed to the bright green that I'm used to here in the American Southeast. And they've very smartly kind of cut some of the bamboo to give you a clear view as you walk into the clearing of Masuda Iwafune. Now, in a moment, I'll talk a little bit more about Kameishi, or tortoise stone, which is very similar to this. I would debate whether or not Masuda Iwafune has any real relation to Kameishi's tortoise stone. This is the stone that lies in the shadow of the sort of prefectural community center here in the village, and it has a bit of a legend around it. Apparently it faces towards the south, but it used to face towards the east, and from time to time it changes the direction it's facing. If it ever faces west, then Japan or all of Nara Prefecture would turn to mud. This is because it was erected to commemorate the turtles that were killed in a period of warfare around Nara that killed a lot of them just incidentally. There may have been some kind of a draining of the basin here to enable a battle, and many of these turtles lost their lives. Also, the legend says that it marked a dividing line between a religious monastery and another monastery, something that is more mundane, but the legends, I think, are a little bit more interesting and a little more fun to follow. Looking around, you can see the countryside around Nara, how it really did used to be a large basin, something that was very easily flooded, and maybe the myths say that this was drained so that the battle could take place where the turtles were killed. And they made these large turtles to commemorate those that lost their lives. And I'm walking now around Kameishi to just show you that obviously Masuda Iwafune dwarfs this rock, but this is a little taller than I am, and it's made of the same granite stone. And this is Oyamada, which you can't really see. It's underneath a school. I believe this is a school for the blind and deaf, but I did want to show you some of the photos from it, talk a little bit about it, because it's in relation to Shobuike's tomb. This was a tomb, Oyamada, from the Asuka period, from around 530 to 710 AD, and some of the photos show, this of course was covered up later, but to preserve it. But these are the cobbles and ruins and bricks that are right underneath the surface layer of soil. Now, just across the street, you have Shobuike tomb, which houses two large sarcophagi made of volcanic stone from Hyogi Prefecture, which is actually pretty far away, the Shobuike mounded tomb. Now, the story here that I thought was interesting was that Fujiwara Kyo was the imperial capital for around 16 years, from 694 to 710 AD. This was the first pre-planned city in Imperial Japan, and this would have served during that time period. Now, an interesting fact is that Emperor Tenmu and Empress Jito are found on the same axis leading from this imperial city as this mounded tomb, Shobuike, so a large number of historians believe that members of the royal family related to Tenmu and Jito are buried right here in this 30-meter by 30-meter, basically pyramid structure, although most of it has eroded away. This has been something that's been venerated since the 1920s because of its very vague and unknown relation to the Emperor Tenmu and Empress Jito. It was also conjectured that perhaps members of the Soga clan were buried here because the sarcophagi, which are now very much eroded, as you can see in this photo, are sort of similar to other burials of the Soga clan found in the nearby area. And you can see a more decent photo taken by archaeologists here of the sarcophagi that have been lit up, and you can see the view over the basin of Nara and of Asuka village. These are some of the earlier photos of excavations, now mostly under soil. I believe these places are all taken care of by the Imperial Household Agency. I actually saw a couple of their vehicles riding around. They drive in very nice cars. I had no idea how many ancient ruins there would be here when I first stopped off. In fact, I got here at around 7:30, and I've been waiting for a local museum to open at 10. Up here to the left is the mausoleum of Emperor Tenmu and Empress Jito. Then a little bit further up this road to the right is Oni no Maneita, which looks very similar to the first ruins we saw today, the giant turtle rock in the bamboo grove. Continuing up a little further,
Kanazuka tumuli, and the mausoleum of Emperor Kinmai with the tomb of, I suppose, one of his close associates.
This traditional shrine is at the entrance to the footpath leading to the mausoleum of Emperor Tenmu and Empress Jito. Now, Emperor Tenmu was the 40th traditional emperor, dying in 686 AD. He was a man who consolidated imperial power. He reformed the military and decentralized the government, allying with the Kingdom of Silla, which was in Korea, while also rebuking the Chinese and the Tang dynasty, really consolidating his power over much of the island. He was the first to call himself emperor, or Tenno, I believe, and I apologize already if I'm mispronouncing half of these words. No, I believe especially with Empress Jito, who's commemorated here, the 41st ruler of Japan, dying in 703 AD. This is a Shinto shrine, and I believe it's dedicated to the emperor and empress, although she has no known grave. In 697, she abdicated the throne and gave it to Emperor Monmu, who succeeded her. But from then, she took to a period of cloistered rule. By the way, this is Emperor Tenmu, and this is Empress Jito. This period of cloistered rule was common across a number of emperors and empresses, where they would abdicate and take on a religious life while ruling from behind the curtains, from within the monastery or within the shrine, which is a fascinating sort of facet to ancient Japanese culture. And this is the Kanazuka tumuli, which I thought was fascinating because it's really vague on who's buried here and what specifically it commemorates, but that's the case with a lot of these ancient tombs in Nara Prefecture. Supposedly, it was built as a secondary tomb for Emperor Kinmai, and it measured 38 meters on the sides and between 6 and 8 meters tall. The Imperial Household Agency considers it the tomb of Princess Kibihime, but this is also someone who supposedly is buried elsewhere. She's the mother of Empress Saimei and the granddaughter of Emperor Kinmai, the grandmother of Emperors Tenchi and Tenmu. And this is to the east of Emperor Tenmu's kofun, or tomb, but probably she's actually buried to the west in the tomb with 4 stones. And this is Emperor Kinmai, the 29th emperor, who ruled from 539 to 571 CE. Many believe him to be the first verifiable Japanese emperor, and according to the Nihon Shoki, Emperor Kinmai received a bronze statue of Gautama Buddha as a gift from the king of Baekje. The king's name was Song Myong. This is an ancient Korean kingdom. A lot of historians view this as the introduction of Buddhism to Japan, because along with this bronze statue of Gautama Buddha came monks and artisans, and this occurred all in 552 CE. Very famously, the Mononobe clan opposed non-traditional worship and figured that it would cause a rift between traditional Japanese deities and the new practice of Buddhism on the island, and this caused a period of turmoil. It's important to recognize as well that there's no definitive proof that these are the mausoleums of the emperors I've been talking about, but these are the emperors and empresses that are recognized by the Imperial Household Agency as being commemorated here. So even if perhaps Emperor Kinmai isn't buried in this kofun, this is his mausoleum, at least in the eyes of the Japanese royal family. And buried right in the shadow of this is Kibihime, who died in 643, the mother of Emperor Kotaku and Empress Saimei. Stones were actually found in neighboring fields, and what I find so fascinating about the 4 monkey stones here is that they serve no real known purpose. This is just kind of a mound overlooking the larger kofun, but these Edo period, Tokugawa shogunate period stones, they don't really have a known purpose. So it's very conceivable that there could be many more of these scattered in the fields, especially to the south, where these 4 were discovered. And it's unknown why farmers brought them to this specific tomb, but clearly they serve some sort of folk function. And it would be fascinating to learn a little bit more about them, but I believe a lot of this is mostly in Japanese language sources. I can't find much in English. And these are the 4 stones. They call them monkey stones, but they don't know what they're supposed to represent. The one to the left is especially stylized, and the right here as well. And this is a beautiful overlook of the basin surrounding all of these tombs. And here specifically we're looking at Oni no Seichin, which is called the Demon's Toilet. Now that's because demons, or Oni, were said to hunt wayward travelers whenever a thick fog set in, especially ones traveling in specifically the direction I had traveled to see the graves of more well-known emperors and empresses of Japan. The victims would be dragged up to a cutting board on a hill directly overlooking this, where they would be divided up, eaten, and then the demons would walk directly to the south to use Oni Seichin, or the Demon Toilet. If we take a look at Oni no Managita, we can see the demon's cutting board, which is a pretty interesting place if you actually take into account what these tombs would have been used for. The cutting board was clearly the basement stone, something that you could set a sarcophagus or a set of remains, a skeleton on top of. But because the burial mound on top of it eroded away with time, the larger stone on top, the demon's toilet, fell down the hill, and this is the demon's cutting board, and it literally divides on left and right the path that leads to the Emperor's kofun, Emperor Kinmai. And this is the Kengoshi Asuka tumuli, a fascinating reconstruction of an 8-sided sort of pyramidal burial mound designated for the Empress Saimei, or Kogyoku. And again, I'm really sorry if I butcher these names. She was twice the Empress of Japan, from 642 AD to 645 AD, when Soga no Iruka was assassinated. Her brother, Kotoku, became emperor, but in 654 he died, leaving the throne open, and in 655 she retook the throne again after a period of basically having no ruler of Japan. She would pass away in 661 and would be succeeded by another leader. But this was all actually very recently reconstructed, with the original stone burial chamber with a very nice viewing platform to look down into it. And finally, I'm visiting the tomb of Emperor Jimmu, who was supposedly the first semi-mythical emperor of Japan. His ascension to the throne came in 660 BC, In traditional Japanese narratives, he was the descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu through her grandson Ninigi, as well as a descendant of Susanoo, a god of the storms. And now you can see why certain events in Japanese history, such as invading forces being wiped out by large storms or waves, and why Japan is seen as the land of the rising sun, you can see why this plays into the Japanese national narrative.
And I believe this path leads to the Maruyama Palace, or the site of the Maruyama Palace. We're near Mount Unbai, but forbidden without permission. The building to the left is the Imperial Household Agency, which controls access to the tomb of Emperor Jimmu.